Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina Woodruff, and this week we are going to get into helping teens set boundaries with other adults. And before we do that, Jeremiah has this week's parenting moment.
So, it's always interesting to me. Our children tend to want to connect at the most inconvenient times, let's say.
It's so true.
This past weekend, one of our children is in the mountain bike club, and we had a mountain bike race a ways from home, and it was a long day, and we were tired, and we finally got home Saturday evening. We had a couple other things come up. I had to go help a daughter and son-in-law with something last minute. And Selina and I decided we'd go out on a date and grab some dinner and hit the grocery store and grab a couple of things that we needed and come home and crash and go to bed. And I just climbed into bed and we were settling down. And of course, my adult son decided he wanted to talk. And so he came in and I think we spent about an hour talking. But what's interesting to me is that, when we make the time to connect with our children, when they want to connect, powerful things can happen for us. And it was a great conversation. I felt more connected to him than I felt in a while. And I hope that it seemed like he felt the same way. And I really appreciated it. And so I guess the parenting moment here is, when they want to talk, let them talk. Don't push them away, especially when you're tired.
Yep.
Because you never know what the result is going to be, and it could be a great opportunity.
I think that's a great reminder, too, of our expectations of what it looks like, because we would never be able to plan that conversation. Mm-hmm. It just has to happen naturally on their terms.
Yeah, I agree. And my parents, my dad in particular, was pretty good about that. And even now with his adult children, it's still very much the same. I know that if something is going on and if I need my parents in the middle of the night or if there's an emergency or something, I can call them. But yeah, I do feel like that seems to just be a thing. The best conversations just seem to happen between the hours of like 10 p.m. and midnight.
Yep.
It seems to be, and kids have their own timeline, and they do seem to come wide awake at like the witching hour or something.
Well, and you really want to develop that culture in your home of, hey, I'm always available. I don't care, especially if it's something serious, in the middle of the night, whatever. Call, come see me, whatever it takes. But we're here for you, and I think that that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so this week's topic stems from personal experience, as many of our topics do. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details, but I did want to share an experience that's been going on in my own neighborhood. And part of this stems from, we've spent a lot of time talking about the dangers of the online world. And those are very, very real. And how kids are more likely to fall victim to predators in the online world than they are in the physical world. But that doesn't mean there are zero risks in the physical world. And the one thing that's so important to understand is that the risks of kids falling victim to any type of predator or to just getting into uncomfortable or inappropriate situations, it's almost always with an adult that they know and probably trust to some degree. So we let all sorts of adults into our children's lives. And for the most part, that's actually a good thing. I mean, you think of extended family, aunts, uncles, grandparents, teachers, coaches, community members, church members, right? Like all of these wonderful adults that can have a really positive impact on the lives of our teens. I myself, growing up, had a lot of great, wonderful adults outside of my parents that had a very positive and healthy impact on my life and kind of were critical for my development. But kids have to understand boundaries with adults. So there is a family in our neighborhood, and I wouldn't say we'd become really close with this family, but the parents passed the vibe check, so to speak. Okay, so he taught high school in another school district, and she was a stay-at-home mom. And our kids kind of hung out a little bit, did a couple of birthday parties, hanging out at bus stops, that kind of a thing. So then this guy got arrested for multiple inappropriate incidences with a student at his school. And then some more things came out that he was convicted of. And it really turned out this guy should not be around children and youth in general. So just not a good person. And we were kind of reeling about this for a couple of days. And we told our kids just kind of the gist of it. We didn't go into specifics. We kept it age appropriate for them, but we needed them to understand. And obviously, we use this as an opportunity to say, okay, teachers in general are a really great resource, but boundaries with teachers is so important, and kind of went over some of the and we'll get more into some of the healthy boundaries that you can and should set with teachers. But this actually turned out to be a good thing, because this guy ended up getting out on bail and has been in our neighborhood. And so thankfully I have a really great neighborhood, and we've kind of all, as a community, kind of created, I guess, a neighborhood watch. And so we're all kind of aware of the situation. We all kind of watch out for this guy and work together to keep kids safe. But it can and does happen anywhere. And most of the time, when kids' boundaries are violated, it is by an adult that they trust.
Yeah, and I appreciate, Liz, that you shared the information that was appropriate with your children. Mm-hmm. I think too often we tend to try and hide those things from our children because they are big and heavy and scary, but they need to know that these things happen, and they need to understand it, and they need to be aware. And that's where we start to develop these boundaries. And you just never know who might be not such a great person. And it is really important that we help our listeners remember that adult role models play a huge role in the lives of our children. They played a role in our lives, each and every one of us, and they play an important role in the lives of our children. And I have to continue to believe that the majority of people are good and want to do good things. I can't tell you how deeply grateful I am for, just a vast number of adults who have been influential in each of my children's lives and will continue to be. But we do put things into place, and we do set boundaries, and we do teach and help educate our children so that we can have those safeguards in place to protect them from anyone who would like to do them harm.
Right. And I am sure any teachers out there listening are probably feeling pretty angry, because there are so many great teachers. And, in general, I have so much respect and appreciation for the work that teachers do. And because I do believe that they can have a huge influence on, the education of our kids and just our kids' lives in general. I can think of, a couple of teachers off the top of my head where they made a really big difference, they had a big impact on me in high school. And again, there was boundaries set in place. And I think it's also important to point out that even since I was in high school and I was in high school from, I think, like 06 to 2010, that's when social media, that was right around when Facebook first came out. We were all kind of transitioning off of MySpace onto Facebook, and that's when social media really started to explode. And back then, it was actually okay for students and teachers to be Facebook friends. That is 100% not acceptable anymore. And for very good reason. There is absolutely no reason for your teacher to have any of your personal information, any social media information, cell phone number, right? It's just not appropriate, and there's just no reason for it, unless your teacher happens to be a family member, right? Obviously, or maybe even a very, very close family friend that is already trusted and kind of established in the family. That's a bit of a different circumstance, obviously. But, teachers are such a great resource, and we need to help our kids understand, if you need extra help outside of, scheduled class time, then only ever communicate with your teacher through approved means that are right? Like, so school email or school communications. And if you do need assistance outside of the class, try to keep it scheduled during school hours, or take a friend or another student with you. I'm sure you're not the only one in class struggling. Take another student and say, hey, we're both struggling with this, and, make it kind of a team thing, or maybe even ask your teacher to invite another teacher to be in the room. So it's really just about safety and creating safe boundaries and a safe environment where you can learn and get the extra help that you need. And any good teacher will agree to that and will say, yeah, I 100% support, these boundaries, and would be willing to, help make a student comfortable to get extra help from me.
Yeah, I think every family's going to kind of have their own boundaries of what they feel comfortable with or not comfortable with. And, different relationships are different. We might know the teacher on a personal level outside of school. It just depends. But I like your guidelines for in general when it comes to teachers. And there's all kinds of adults in our children's lives, right? It's not just teachers. We have doctors that we even want to be cautious with. Any adult, especially, unfortunately, we see a lot of abuse happening when there's step parents involved. Mm-hmm. And so learning how to have those boundaries and those conversations in those settings is also important. I think the main key here is helping our children have confidence in being able to speak up when they don't feel safe or when something has happened, and to recognize that I don't have to go into a situation that is making me uneasy. There's another option, and there's always another option. And so helping kids understand that, I think, is one of the keys to all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know as an adult and being like a leader of youth, I personally take those safeguards to not be alone with them or not text them individually, to take those safeguards to show that importance to them, and to take that opportunity also to teach them in other settings that you don't want to get comfortable with this. I know it's hard because, like our kids are friends and things like that, but we need to make sure that they understand by our example of setting up those boundaries for us ourselves with them. It will show what's an appropriate boundary across the board with all adults.
And that will translate well into their adult life, right? So, it's going to help teach them, I don't have to say yes to a boss for something I'm uncomfortable with, right? Or if I'm on a date and I'm uncomfortable with something as an adult and I'm dating, I can say no, and I can, right? Like, I can set healthy boundaries. And it can start at a young age. I think one thing that is kind of starting to come to light is family members who try to force kids to give them hugs. Is kind of this new thing where there's been this new push. And you know what? If your kid doesn't want to give a grandparent a hug, they should have the autonomy and the freedom to say, no, I don't want to. And I think it's important to respect that.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter what the relationship is to the child. They need to learn at a young age that they get to have that control over their body and touch and those kinds of things. And it's okay. Mm-hmm. We want to be really careful, though, that we don't start creating victims out of our children because, a grandparent pressured them to give them a hug. Like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Right.
We don't want to make victims out of our children. Victims become dependent on others for survival and for safety and protection. So we want to create strength. And that's what setting boundaries is really about. It's about protecting relationships. It's not about cutting people off. It's not about being mean or unkind. It's about protecting the relationship on both sides of the aisle. And our world has really taken boundaries to this next level, which I don't think is very helpful most of the time. But in general, when we set a boundary, it says, hey, I value you, and I want you to value me. And so this is where I'm comfortable operating, is inside of these boundaries. If we step out of those, I'm not comfortable anymore, and I'm going to do what's necessary to protect myself or protect my loved ones. And that's really about it when it comes to boundaries. And I think the other piece here is that what we're trying to get at is that teens often, or children often, struggle with boundaries with adults, because we
Mm-hmm.
teach children to respect adults. And of course, there's different cultures and things that we could get into, and different varying degrees of relationships that are present in different cultures. But in general, it's difficult because we teach children and teens to respect adults, and we think that respect means I do whatever they tell me to do. That's not what respect is. And we certainly want to continue teaching our children to respect adults. They need to respect their teachers, and they need to respect their boss when they have a job. They need to respect their parents and their grandparents and aunts and uncles or caregivers or whatever it might be. But that doesn't mean that they have to engage in some sort of behavior they're not comfortable with. Not that they don't want to do, but that they're uncomfortable with because it might be outside of an appropriate boundary.
And I think a great way for that is you can let your kids know, I will always be an out. If something maybe seems off, or if you're unsure, just you can tell coach, teacher, adult, let me check with my parents first on that one. I think that's a great way to help give kids an out. And then you as a parent can assess, okay, yeah, that's maybe not the best, or let's tweak this here so we're all a little more comfortable. Or you can just look at your kid and say, no, you didn't need to check with me because you didn't want to run, 3 extra laps at baseball practice.
Right.
That's, that's not your coach setting something inappropriate. That's just, you don't want to do it. And
Yep.
so I do appreciate that distinction, because, and it can be a delicate balance for sports. And again, there's so many wonderful, great coaches out there that have a really great, powerful impact on kids' lives. And sometimes coaches will push kids, physically, like push them in their training. And sometimes parents may even sign up for a coach for one-on-one individual training. And, you do have to find that balance and explain, and maybe even just set the expectation. And you can even set the expectation with the coach, with the kid. Hey, what's expected? Like, what are the expectations? What are you guys going to be doing? Are you going to be working on form? What is working on form going to involve? And, because sometimes for young kids, it can be helpful for a coach to physically show a kid or help a kid. So I'm thinking of softball, and maybe it might be helpful for a coach to physically, help a kid with batting or with throwing or walking them through. And so just making sure everything is above board in public, there's extra people, right? And so that there's nothing inappropriate. Because I agree, we don't want to create victims. If a coach is helping a kiddo with their baseball form, we don't need our kid to be thinking, oh, he put his hands over my hand to show me how to bat. Okay, like, is the coach really doing anything, inappropriate here? Or did everybody witness it and this coach is just trying to help a kid out? So yeah, I agree. There does have to be a good balance.
Yeah, and part of it's going to be trusting your instincts as a parent, right? Moms and dads have great instincts. And it seems like, in my experience, moms have even better instincts than dads. But you've got to be involved. You got to be involved in what they're doing, and watch what's happening, and, be there when you can be there. And you can't always be, especially when your kids become teens, you can't always be there. And that's why we've taught them, what's okay and what's not okay. And we just want our kids to be safe and be able to have a voice for themselves, to recognize that, hey, I can say, no, I'm not going to go get in your car and ride home with you while you take me to get ice cream after practice, just you and me, because you want to reward me. Like, that's definitely a boundary we wouldn't want to cross. And so I think we just want to be extra cautious about making sure that our children still understand what it means to respect others and adults, and respect themselves, and have a voice for themselves that says, hey, this isn't okay, or this is okay, or I'm not comfortable with that. And we'll deal with the consequences as they come.
Yeah, absolutely. So I part of the reason I brought up softball is my daughter just started softball, and we actually know her coach very well. In fact, her coach has a daughter that they're really close friends. And so, yeah, there is, I mean, I don't want to say a blurring of the lines a little bit, but he'll give her a ride to practice and he'll give her a ride home, right? But obviously he always has his daughter. It's my daughter and his daughter, right? And so he, as a coach and father and friend, is just, helping with transportation. And I think that's a great thing. Parents are really busy. It takes a village. And it's obviously a boundary that I'm 100% comfortable with because I trust this individual and he's not alone. I think that's another big thing is it's just not appropriate for adults to be alone with a kid that is not their own. That's just a really easy boundary. And you see this all the time in church settings, coaching settings, school settings, even in doctors' offices. Kids are almost never alone with adults, right? And I think that's just a really easy, important boundary to set.
Yeah, and it's an important boundary. And I love your example with the coach and his daughter. We want our children to be influenced by other adults, other good adults. Again, the majority of people are good people. They're would never do anything to harm a child. They would only want to help. Maybe sometimes they might be misguided a little bit, but in general, people just are good and they don't have any desire to harm. And those are the people you want around your children. I promise you that at a certain point, your ability to influence your teenager is significantly diminished.
Yes.
And so we need others who might have a greater capacity to influence because they're not their parents. And we want those adults that we trust and we know have the same standards and values and discipline that we have to be those people that influence. So be careful, I guess, with setting boundaries that are so harsh that nobody else ever has an opportunity to influence your child.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think knowing your child and having that connection throughout their life is going to be helpful because you're going to be aware of things going on or conversations you have with them. I think sometimes my kids, I've seen over the years, share things with me that they don't realize what they're sharing. And I learn a lot of information without them really telling me what's exactly happening. I can pick up on things that they're saying or situations or talking about even their friends, and I can connect the dots. And so just having those conversations with your kids continually, not just like a one time, let's sit down, let's talk about what's happening with this adult, but always having those conversations and being connected and involved in their life, you're going to be able to pick up and know if things are happening, or they might not even realize something might be inappropriate, but they'll share with you something that you're like, wait a minute, I'm not comfortable with that. And so you can have those conversations and continue to be involved and help them.
Yeah, I think about the example you just shared with your daughter and her friend with her friend's dad, the coach. I certainly would be having conversations with her saying things like, well, what did you guys talk about on your ride home? What does her dad do? And you're going to pick up on stuff, even the people you trust. You want to have those conversations about, and you're going to pick up on things that either solidify your comfort and your confidence in that individual or put a question in your mind and help you to know that you might need to do something different.
Yeah. So taking this maybe even one step further, because I think it is important to identify safe adults for your kids to go to. And we especially might do that. So I'm thinking in case of an emergency, right? So like, let's say mom and dad are out on a date, your older kiddo is babysitting, and something happens. Somebody has to call 911 or there's some sort of an emergency. Obviously, they're going to want to call you. But in the meantime, I think it could also be healthy to identify maybe a neighbor or a close friend, somebody that they can just say, hey, if you're ever in this situation, run next door and, grab so-and-so, just so that, because having to call 911 is a big deal. It's really scary. And having an adult that you know and trust can really be helpful to kids to just kind of help keep the situation calm. So again, this can go both ways. There can be really great people to help out in a child's life.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great idea, Liz. It's certainly something that we've done at our house. Like, hey, if something happens, you can go to this neighbor or that neighbor, but I prefer that you don't go to this one over here. And we've done that many times in our home. Luckily, I feel like we've been pretty blessed and haven't really needed the assistance of neighbors. But I remember when I was a kid, we did, when my older sister was babysitting and we had an incident with somebody coming to our house, and we were able to call a neighbor, and the neighbor came over and helped us manage through that, which was very helpful. So it is important to have a community of people around you that can be trusted, that will look out for your kids. So
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into maybe a little bit of why kids are sometimes reluctant to say no, because I think that's important to understand. And usually it's a fear of a consequence. So maybe they're afraid they won't get as good of a grade. Maybe they're afraid they're going to get less playtime on the field if they're in a sport, or they're afraid of disappointing the coach. And those are all key areas to kind of address and to tell your teen nothing is worth it. Nothing is worth you being uncomfortable. And maybe even acknowledge in the moment it might feel hard. I mean, it might feel hard, or it might even feel devastating to know or to be thinking, man, if I don't do what my coach said, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm uncomfortable. What if they don't give me less playtime? That can affect all sorts of things. I need my playtime. And those feelings are very real for teens, and we have to help them understand that's an in the moment feeling. And that in the moment feeling, while valid, will pass. And you need to think about overall safety and long-term healthy relationships.
Well, and that, Liz, is something that comes through repeated work with your child, because just telling them that doesn't necessarily help them solve that struggle and that difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
But working with them and helping them understand the principles behind it and what's happening. Because the reality is that, if we do have a coach or a teacher that has inappropriate motives
Uh-huh.
for some of their efforts, you're absolutely right. A grade could be affected. Playtime could be affected. Same thing happens to adults, right? If you provide this favor for me, I'll get you this promotion, right? And it's wrong. And so we have to teach children, even at a young age, that that's not okay, because we don't want to develop something where, you have a daughter who gets into the workforce and her boss says, well, if you sleep with me, then I'll give you this raise. And she's like, oh, okay, well, that's how I did it in, sports. That's how I did it in
Mm-hmm.
school. And so here we are as an adult, we're doing it the same way. We don't want that happening. We want them to be able to stand up for themselves and say, no, that's ridiculous.
Yep.
I'm not going to do this extra thing for you so that I can play. And again, so much of this is going to come back to the relationship you have with your child and having regular conversation and helping them to feel confident and comfortable in sharing with you what's happening, because you can be aware of that as a parent. And then we can put an end to it right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, most people are just there to do good, and we
Yes.
don't have that issue. But if we do, it's something that can be resolved, and assuring our children that we can work with them to help resolve that issue is going to be critical.
Yeah.
I can think of another situation of maybe your kids don't trust that you can handle what they're going to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe practicing in other less serious situations, our reaction to things that happen might build that trust and confidence that you'd be able to handle, or even the fear of them being in trouble from you as to what
Mm-hmm.
happened, like why were they in that situation, or why didn't they do this or that, or even just what are you going to do to take care of the situation and how embarrassing that might be for them. I just
Yep.
think of all those different scenarios for a child and why they maybe might not tell their parents, even if they have that connection and they have that relationship with their parents, fear of disappointment to their parents of the situation that happened. So
Or
just,
fear that their parents are going to freak out when they tell them something.
we can't control all of these things and all these thoughts our kids have and all the choices
Yep.
they make with that. But just being aware, I think, of some of maybe those situations of what could be happening and what they're experiencing, and having compassion to them of how that must be hard for them to have to talk about it or bring it up or share that with somebody else, and the fear that they have with what will happen next.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think that is a really important point. And, as parents, if you found out that an adult that was supposed to be a trusted adult somehow took advantage of your teen, you're going to be angry and you're not going to be okay. And it's okay to have those feelings. But I do agree that doing your best to remain calm. And I also think it's important to understand that being calm does not mean you just say, oh, okay, yeah, all right, that's not good. We'll get to that. It's, okay, this is serious. We're going to address this, and I'm going to be assertive in this situation. I mean, and obviously it depends on the situation. Sometimes it might just be a good opportunity for your teen to advocate for themselves, depending on the situation. But other times, if it requires your involvement, it requires you to be assertive and to step up and say, this is not an okay situation, and this needs resolved. And you can absolutely do that while remaining calm.
Yeah, and you have an obligation and responsibility as a parent to do that. I think one of the important things, and this is a good example of this that I experienced when one of my children were in middle school. There was a teacher that was being pretty unfair about quite a few things and creating some turmoil for my child. And I would just tell my child, well, if they try and do that, you just tell them. And I was, feeding my child all these things, and it was creating more anxiety for them. And there was this huge fear of, how's dad going to handle this? Because he's not tolerating it very well. And I didn't learn that till later, that like, no, you saying that, dad, actually made it worse, made it a lot worse. And so sometimes when we have these situations come up where another adult has maybe violated a boundary, if it's appropriate, and sometimes we just have to take immediate action, right? If it's really serious, but where it's appropriate, we can sit down with the child, the teenager, and say, hey, how would you like my assistance with this? How can I help you? Because this isn't okay, and that's not okay. So what would you like to see done? Because I don't want to just come storming in here and, knock your teacher's teeth out because they're being unfair to you. What I want to do is find a solution that you're comfortable with, because guess what? You, mom or dad, don't have to go to class with that teenager the next day, right? They still have to go to class and face that teacher the next day. And now you're not there. And so, working with them on what they feel like might be a good solution, or discussing the possible solutions with them, might be a great way to approach it, and a great way to build confidence and connection in your relationship with your teenager.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think there are sometimes instances where, maybe a teacher they're legitimately are being unfair about some things, but from the teacher's perspective, they may not be. And that could also be a really good confidence building opportunity for your teen to step up and say, I don't agree with this, or can we negotiate this, or can we figure this out? That can be a really great opportunity for a teen to deal with and handle that situation by themselves, right? But obviously there has to be a judgment call of, okay, do I need to step in here? And do I
if
need
it's
to
appropriate and they have the capacity to handle it themselves.
Yes, exactly. Because another thing that we have to help our kids understand is all teachers are different. When my kids come at me and complain, oh, well, it's just this teacher, my grade or this assignment didn't happen, it's the teacher. I say, okay, yeah, sometimes you're going to get teachers that you don't connect with as well, or you're going to get teachers that you don't jive with. But ultimately, the onus of the grade, of the assignments and everything, that is your responsibility. And you need to find a way to figure out how to get the extra help you need, or to figure things out for yourself, and not just let your kid be the victim and, this is just not a good teacher, right? Help your kids understand, no, teachers are actually pretty good at what they do. And you need to make sure you're putting in the work and the effort to learn the material.
Yep, that's great direction, Liz. And again, where the child can do it, let them do it.
Yep.
If it's not appropriate and you need to get involved, then get involved. It just comes a little bit different from a parent than a child, if there's something going on. And I think those situations are probably more few and far between than we probably realize. They don't happen all the time. And so, helping them learn to advocate for themselves and to find solutions for their struggles and challenges is just going to be part of life, and helping them understand that, guess what? We're not going to get along with everybody. We're not going to love every boss we have, or every teacher we have, or every coworker we have, or every peer that is in our class. We're just not going to. And so learning how to get along with those individuals and to work with them is key, as long as those individuals aren't crossing an unhealthy boundary.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, final thoughts.
I think helping our kids with people pleasing is a good skill to help prevent some of these situations. So not just with adults, but anybody their peers, other friends, whatever, but that we don't have to do things for other people that we're not comfortable with, whatever the age is. And so practicing that in different situations can help them in these bigger situations that they come across.
I appreciate that you said that, Selina, because people pleasing can create a lot of struggles for children, especially when they move into adulthood. So helping your children understand it's not your responsibility to make your coach happy or your friends happy or your teacher happy. It's not your responsibility to worry about their feelings and what they're experiencing. And so I think that could be a helpful skill for them to have for sure. And as we set these boundaries and we help our children to learn to set boundaries, again, the key is, I think, to have that relationship with your children, no matter the age, but make that a habit and a part of your life to connect and to talk and to discuss things together and openly so that when the big things come up, they're more comfortable sharing those with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And with their peers is actually a really great way to give them the opportunity to practice standing up for themselves and saying no. I don't like that, or I'm uncomfortable with that. And the great thing about kids is they're not intentionally malicious most of the time. And peer pressure is a real thing. And sometimes friends are like, oh, let's do this really cool thing. And your kid may say, well, I'm not really comfortable with that. That's a great opportunity and a great way to start, right? To start learning to advocate for themselves and to set healthy boundaries. It can start with peers. And so give kids the opportunity to do that. If you hear your friend suggesting something, before you just jump in and stop it, see what your kid says. They might surprise you because they might say, no, hitting the baseball in the house, that actually doesn't sound like a very good idea. I'm not really comfortable with that. Let's do something different, right? So give your kids the opportunities to, set boundaries with their peers.
Definitely.
Okay, so next week we are going to get into staying connected when teens pull away, and we will see you all then. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.